All right, looks like recording is started. All right, wait another moment here. I've got a couple slides that I'll get ready to show. All right, can everybody see these slides? Perfect, okay, great. Thank you for the confirmation. Okay, well, I would say we can go ahead and get started. My name is Professor Brit. I teach in the biology department and the BBMB program, and I'm joined by my colleagues who I will let introduce themselves by unmuting.
I don't know if Arielle's going to introduce herself. I think she's worried about the echo. She's not going to introduce her. That's that's Arielle over there. Professor Arielle Cooley. She teaches in biology. I am Professor Tim Parker. I teach in biology and in environmental studies.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. So our plan for today is we've got a couple slides just to kind of give you an overview of these different life sciences programs here at Whitman. And then we plan for most of the time to be a question and answer opportunity for you all so that you can ask us things that you have on mind, questions about these programs specifically, or any other questions that you've got on your mind. And we'll do our best to answer them or direct you to the folks who can likely answer them if we are not able to. Okay, great. So let me just switch over here to my slides. So here we're looking at some images of the science building here on campus. Maybe some of you have gotten an opportunity to be here visiting with us. And then inside the science building in our atrium, right, where we're looking into the STEM hub, which is a sort of major hub of study, office hours, practice, activities, etc. in the building. And then some of these additional pictures are looking at inside of our research labs that we have inside the building, and then research areas that we have off-site in the community. All right, I can go ahead. I'll talk a little bit about the biology department. Unless Professor Cooley, would you like to take this? Okay, Professor Cooley's audio is a little rough today, so I'll talk about biology and the BBMB program, and then I'll hand it off to Professor Parker to talk about environmental studies a little bit more. So here you're looking at some of the faculty and staff members of the biology department here at Whitman. And I kind of think of our biology department as giving you the opportunity to study life from molecules to ecosystems, right? Getting a really nice broad background in biology. So the learning goals for our department, right? These are the goals that we set as the faculty members. These are what we want everybody to accomplish during their time as a student in the biology department. So this is going to include understanding core biological concepts, right? That include things like evolution, structure and function, information flow, exchange and storage in the context of life, pathways and transformations of energy and matter, and the nature of complex systems, because biology is definitely a complex system. Students will also understand, interpret, and critically evaluate scientific information presented in multiple different forms. And all of our students will also conduct a structured scientific inquiry, a research project, and thoroughly communicate those results. This is going to happen largely in your senior year through the senior research thesis process, but also is built into several of the courses kind of building up to that. And just to kind of give you a sense of like, what do students who major in biology at Whitman go on to do? So commonly, we've got students interested in health professions, right? So medical, dental, vet medicine, for example, public health, students who go on to graduate training at master's or PhD programs, students who go into the biotech industry, clinical research, lots of students who end up working in conservation and environmental science, maybe going on to teaching, law school, work at non-governmental organizations, science communication, zookeeping, right? Kind of runs the gamut. Okay. Now I'll talk a little bit about the other program that I am involved with here, which is the BBMB program. So this is Biochemistry, Biophysics, and Molecular Biology. So this is an interdisciplinary program where it brings together people from multiple faculty from multiple different departments. So there's a couple of us from the biology department that are part of this program, a physics faculty member, and then one faculty member who is full-time in the BBMB program, but kind of had his origins in chemistry. But then we work really closely together with a number of faculty in the chemistry program here. So the BBMB program has as its learning goals to really integrate concepts from biology, chemistry, and physics to understand the structure and function of biological molecules, right? So understanding life at the molecular level. Students will also demonstrate the ability to read and critique the molecular life science literature. So learning how to read scientific and write scientific research papers. All students do perform experiments and do a research project, and then learn to effectively communicate that science both orally and in writing. So you'll give presentations, you'll write a senior thesis, etc. Great. So BBMB grads go on to careers again. Health professions is a really popular track that students are pursuing with the BBMB program. Also, a lot of students go on to do master's or PhD training to sort of further deepen their education. A lot of students are going right into jobs in biotechnology, clinical research, data science, bioengineering, etc. So again, a lot of different options. Okay, I'll turn it over now to Professor Parker.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was messing around with these slides today and did not realize there were some animations in here. So maybe you could just, well, I get it. Okay, I guess I'll just start here and then I'll have you click through. So environmental studies. So I'm in environmental studies and biology, and I'm going to talk to you today, especially about the intersection of environmental studies and biology. But first I will explain that environmental studies at Whitman is a combined major. So every student who is an environmental studies major combines that major with another discipline. So we're biologists here today, and so I'm going to focus on the environmental studies biology major, but you can see my list over here of other majors that you can combine environmental studies with includes chemistry, geology, physics, economics, politics, sociology, history, anthropology, art, humanities. There's 11 different flavors of environmental studies majors at Whitman. So you have a lot of different options for kind of the lens through which you want to try to understand environmental issues. And all environmental issues are fundamentally interdisciplinary. There's no environmental issue that belongs in one academic discipline or another. They're all fundamentally interdisciplinary, which is why our program is fundamentally interdisciplinary. So to give you just a little sense of that, if you were an environmental studies biology major, you would take courses that more or less add up to a biology major, and you would be taking interdisciplinary courses. You'd be taking courses in the social sciences, things like economics or sociology that had an environmental focus. You'd be taking classes in humanities that had an environmental focus, for instance, maybe an environmental ethics class or an environmental literature class. And you would be taking a few explicitly interdisciplinary classes as well. We have an introductory course, a methods class, and a couple of higher level interdisciplinary courses. So can you forward the slides there, Professor Moss? Yeah, Okay, look at this. Um, so environmental studies program goals. So environmental studies, as I said, is fundamentally interdisciplinary. It requires thinking about environmental issues, just like really thinking about anything you might think of in an education at Whitman, it's going to require critical thinking. You come to Whitman, we want you to learn how to not just take whatever information is fed to you and just believe it. We want you to be able to understand what information, why certain information is more valuable, why certain information might be less valuable. How do you assess the quality of information? How do you question what people are telling you and learn how to make up your mind for yourself? So that's an important part of environmental studies, as it is across our curriculum. We want to enhance environmental literacy. In other words, if you're an environmental studies major, we want you to kind of know what an environmental issue is and have an idea about how we analyze and approach environmental issues. I already mentioned interdisciplinary integration, and we want you to be able to communicate as well, as was already referenced here. So environmental studies biology majors, as Professor Moss was saying, for bio and BBMB majors, all environmental studies biology majors also do thesis research. And there's a whole lot of different paths that environmental studies biology majors take after they leave Whitman. Everything from medical school to working in environmental nonprofits to working in business, kind of anything you can imagine, to research, to work in government, all kinds of other things. So that will cover my whirlwind introduction to environmental studies and biology.
Testing, any luck? Oh, hey, hello, everyone. I have found an audio solution. I'm Professor Arielle Cooley from biology. And as you have heard, as a life science major at Whitman, you have these different options, kind of these different ways that you can explore the life sciences. So whether that's biology or BBMB or biology with environmental studies, they all center around biology, but have different foci. So we'll be happy to talk to you about those. Some students here may also be interested in our newest kind of life science major, which is Brains, Behavior, and Cognition, BBAC. And none of us are affiliated with that program, but we can certainly try and tell you what you know if that's where your life science interests lie.
All right, great. Well, we're happy to take questions. This can be in the form of the chat feature. You could certainly raise your hand and ask us a question, via video if that works, works for you. We did have a couple pre-questions. The admissions office let us know that many of you were interested in hearing about, and I know one of them was about study abroad and some questions about study abroad opportunities with these majors. Professor Parker, Professor Cooley, do you want to start us off?
I'm happy to start it off. Most biology environmental studies majors study abroad, and there are a lot of different options. Very popular options with a lot of environmental studies majors are these field studies opportunities. So there are opportunities in countries ranging from Panama to Cambodia to Chile to Australia, where you go to a program with other students from other mostly United States institutions, and you do field work. You learn about the location where you're studying. You learn about environmental issues there. You learn about the ecology, and you do a research project. So that's one type of option that's very popular. Most of the credits from that would transfer back and cover your environmental studies biology major. There are also options at universities. So if you want to be more immersed in a culture of another country, you could go to study in Denmark or in Germany or New Zealand, and go to a university there and take courses with students from that country. So there are a lot of different options, and many of our students study abroad. What do you want to add, Professor Moss or Cooley?
Yeah, I think study abroad actually works really well with a biology major as well as with a biology environmental studies major. You can either do a more of a language and culture study abroad and meet a lot of your distribution requirements, or one of these programs that Professor Parker talked about that focuses on biology and can really help you advance in your major while studying abroad. And even if you're in BBMB, there are several programs, for example, in Copenhagen, that have a lot of molecular biology coursework. So if you're concerned about can I study abroad and still make progress in my major, there are absolutely some great study abroad options for that.
Yeah, definitely. We have quite a few BBMB majors who do this program that Professor Cooley just mentioned, that has a real biomedical and sort of health sciences focus to it. And those courses are all taught in English, so that there isn't a language requirement for those particular programs. All right. Another question that came up ahead of time, there were several questions about research opportunities for life sciences majors at Whitman. So, Professor Cooley, do you want to start us off talking about that?
Sure. One of the kind of unique things about Whitman is we have all of our life science students do research for a senior thesis. And that means we're here to support you in finding a research project and figuring out what to do with your data when you get them. We have a lot of resources to support finding a research project. Some of our students work with us faculty here on Whitman campus. Many of our students apply for national funding, like research experience for undergraduates. There are various paid summer research projects that will pay you to go to a research university somewhere in the country and be part of a cohort of students exploring a particular research project for the summer. And Whitman has some really unique partnerships with a few programs. Every year, we're allowed to choose two of our biology students and send them to Friday Harbor Marine Lab for a beautiful and amazing summer experience living and working on the coast off of Seattle, studying marine life there. And Professor Moss can tell you more about our partnerships that a lot of BBMB students pursue that are more related to the health sciences. And then the last thing I'll say is, in addition to all of those, Whitman has a program called the Whitman Internship Grant, by which you can apply for funding from Whitman to pay yourself to do an unpaid internship. So a number of my students every year find a lab that does something really interesting. It's at a different university and somewhere, and they email the lab directly and say, I would love to do this research. I can apply for funding from my school to pay myself to work with you for the summer. Would you take me into your lab? And that really helps boost your chances of being invited into a lab that perhaps does exactly the thing that you're really interested in.
Yeah, I can say a little bit more about a couple other partnerships that Whitman has. So we have a partnership with the Mayo Clinic, which has locations in Minnesota, Florida, and Arizona. And we also have a partnership with the Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center in Seattle. So both of those places run summer research programs where they bring undergraduate students to their respective locations, right? And students are placed in a lab where they do like I think it's about 10 weeks in the summer, research in paid research in a lab there. And so what we're able to do is, because we have this partnership, is those programs give us 2 slots to send students to. So we're able to run an internal competition here at Whitman, right, where you apply and you're only competing against other Whitman students, right, which is a much smaller pool than if you apply to these programs on the national competition, where you're likely your application is one amongst many hundreds to thousands of applications. This is a really excellent program opportunity available to Whitman students. Professor Parker, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think you all covered it well. There are many, many options. Actually, I guess the one thing I will add is that a sizable portion of our students who study abroad, when they're studying abroad, they end up doing research, and many students choose to use the research from their study abroad program as the basis of their senior thesis.
Yet another reason to study abroad. You do have to check. Some programs have this built-in biology research program as part of their curriculum and others don't, but that's a really useful thing. And students are, of course, wondering about the funding, the federal funding cuts that have been happening. This is a really confusing time right now, trying to figure out what is federal policy with respect to science funding. We are lucky at Whitman to have the Whitman internship grants that are still there and steady and available for students. But what's going on with science funding at a federal level is certainly in flux at the moment. And we have grant specialists at Whitman who are paying close attention to what's going on at the national level, conveying that to us, helping us make decisions and understand sort of what we can do to support students looking for that research opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll also add that we have substantial internal funding for students to be paid by Whitman to do research with us over the summer as well. So many Whitman students are paid by Whitman to do research, in my lab or in Professor Cooley's lab or Professor Moss's lab or any number of other labs on campus.
Great. Well, we'd love to open it up if there are other questions from any other participants that we can. Again, you're welcome to use the chat to type in a question, or you can unmute yourself, maybe even turn on your video if you're feeling like it, and ask us a question. All right, looks like we've got a question in the chat. I'm a parent of a hopeful BB&C major and would love to hear more about that program. If you can share anything here, sure, we can talk a little bit about it. None of us are affiliated with that program per se, but it's a small place. We know lots of the folks we work with the folks who are affiliated with that program. Yeah, so this is a major that's really combining biology and psychology. So students take really foundational coursework in both of those areas. And then those students also do research projects. So this theme that you're seeing here, Whitman Life Sciences, we are really big on research projects, right? And helping students find and participate in those activities. And it's a really critical part of the learning and training process for being a scientist and understanding science. So that program has faculty from both psychology and biology who are affiliated. And so again, students take courses in both of those particular areas. Is there anything, Professor Cooley, you want to add?
Yeah, I would say this is a really exciting new major. I think we're just in our getting our first graduating seniors, or maybe first or second cohort of graduating seniors this year. And there's a lot of interest and enthusiasm from students for this program. And because we're really rich in neurobiology at Whitman, I would say that biology and psychology have worked closely together in the past, even before BB&C became a major, with many kind of biology, psychology double majors. So we have a lot of really great resources, a lot of cool neuroscience classes. All the BB&C students will take our introductory biology course along with some intro psych, and then we'll kind of weave through the two programs. And in fact, we get together when we're figuring out who's going to advise which senior thesis, and a biology professor might advise some BB&C theses, a psychology professor might take on another set. So we work closely together in helping students kind of synthesize their interests between biology and psychology. And it's a nice combination because it allows you to kind of really sample biology and psychology without having to do quite all the things, not as much chemistry, for example, as you would need to do for a biology major. So it's a little more focused in that respect. And then we have another question in the chat.
Yeah, I can tackle that one.
Yeah, this will be for Professor Moss. Is
Yes,
the biochemistry major heavy on the biology versus chemistry, or vice versa? And when does the planning for senior thesis start?
Yeah, so students who are planning to major in BBMB will take the general chemistry series, which is a 2-class series. You'll take the organic chemistry series, which again is a 2-class series. So there's a pretty good firm chemistry foundation that you're headed in with. You'll take the 2-semester introductory biology series, and then another cell molecular oriented course in the biology program that's either a 200 level or a 300 level class. And then you'll also take math, you'll take calculus, and you will take physics. You'll take the introductory physics series. So it really lays a foundation across math, physics, chemistry, biology, and then your upper level classes in that program are biochemistry, biophysics, and molecular biology, where you're now really going to see how all those different disciplines really integrate to help us understand life at a molecular level. And I'll say that there's some flexibility in the additional courses that you take in that major. So I've had students who are BBMB majors who kind of gravitate towards chemistry. And so they take additional upper level chemistry courses and maybe even work in a chemistry research lab. And then I've had students who might gravitate a little bit more to physiology, right? And so they might take more upper level biology courses in that area and then do research with somebody, a faculty member who's more biomedical in their sort of area. So you can really kind of tailor it to your interest areas. Planning for the senior thesis. Generally, we start to have those conversations with students in junior year to plan ahead, but sometimes even sooner, starting in sophomore year, because there are many students who start research at that stage in their time at Whitman, either here on campus or in a research opportunity off campus, et cetera. So we start to have those conversations as early as possible to help make sure that everybody has a sense of what that process is going to look like, when it might be ideal for them to try and do their research project, et cetera. So your advisors in your particular program will really help guide you through to that. Okay, and then it looks like there's another question about if I'm taking some of these classes already, like AP Calculus and Cell and Molecular, would I be able to test out of some classes? And the answer is yes. There are placement tests for mathematics in particular that can help you place out of, for example, like Calculus 1 or Calculus 2, if you have a pretty firm foundation in that area also. And then other programs, like if you're taking AP courses, depending on your AP score, you might be able to substitute that class for an existing introductory class at Whitman. Professor Cooley or Parker, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I would say our students most commonly get Calculus 1 credit from high AP scores, and then a high AP score in biology will excuse you from the introductory biology lecture. We still have you take the lab as part of meeting your fellow biology students, establishing kind of the hands-on work and learning that we want you to do here at Whitman. So those are probably the two most common AP high scores, and same for International Baccalaureate. Similar equivalent scores on IB will also give you calculus credit and introductory biology lecture credits. Yeah, so take your AP exams and talk to the registrar about transferring your scores as credits. And then we have a question. Can you talk about double majoring in the humanities or social science major of some variety? Professor Parker, do you want to take a first stab at that?
I am happy to do that. So if you're going to be, I think if you were going to be a biology major, that's more viable. That would be very difficult if you were going to be an environmental studies major, because the environmental studies major is already, if you're an environmental studies biology major, you're already taking almost an entire biology major plus courses in the social sciences, humanities, and environmental studies. But if you are a biology major, double majoring in a discipline outside of science is not uncommon. Every year we graduate students who are majoring in everything from philosophy to English to theater. I think it seems to me that we most commonly graduate double majors where the students are in the humanities and biology, the arts or the humanities. Although I certainly remember a psychology, biology double major. I imagine that person would be more likely to be a BB&C major if they came along today. But it's certainly possible. Biology, the science majors at Whitman tend to have higher credit requirements than the humanities and social science majors. So it's certainly viable and it's not uncommon.
Yeah, and since I'm kind of the straight biology representative here, I'll say here's one reason to major in straight biology. It requires fewer credits than biology, environmental studies, or BBMB. And that in turn just frees you up. If you have a real interest in theater, or you want to do a double major and a study abroad, or spend lots of time doing your other passions, a straight biology major is pretty feasible credit-wise. It's very feasible credit-wise. BBMB, biology, ES, because they're more interdisciplinary, you're already getting a lot of that breadth required by the major. So if there was a specific other thing you wanted to do, like Spanish, it's just a little harder to fit it in.
Yeah, I would say that that all tracks. It's a little bit trickier in BBMB, as was mentioned, just because there are more required credits in that major. But I've certainly have students who have done it. I've had students who've done BBMB sociology. I've had students BBMB German studies. So particular, like if you're really interested in a particular language, I've seen students do that, and it requires some careful planning in order to make it happen. What is more common, I would say, is to have students who get a minor in one of these programs, right? So a minor requires fewer credits. So I would say it's very common to have students in any of our programs, or at least bio and BBMB that I know of, who do minors in programs across campus. Okay, are there any other questions we can answer for you all?
And I'll say, while you're thinking of your last questions, you're also welcome to email any of us. If you just look up Whitman Biology, you should find all of our names and emails there, and we're always happy to help you with follow-up questions. For specifics about credit transfers, how much will this or that community college course be worth, email registrar@whitman.edu. They're really helpful. And I dropped a note in the chat about the contact information for the Brains, Behavior, and Cognition program. That is Nancy Day is a good person to reach out to for more information about that. Yeah, so final questions, either to type them in the chat or just raise your hand as an emoji if you have something. All right. And if not, I guess thank you all for coming here. It's really nice to have a chance to share some of what we do with all of you, and hopefully that was helpful to you. Any other concluding thoughts, Professors Moss or Parker?
No, I will just say maybe I will see some of you at Spring into Whitman Days next month or at Summer Fly-In. So if you see me, come say hello and say that you met me on Zoom.
Absolutely. All right, we will press the stop record button and hope to see you all in the fall.
Thank you, everyone.